Good evening, everyone. I'm Shelley, manager of the Vanderhoof Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to thank everyone for coming out, and we'd especially like to thank all of our candidates for traveling into Vanderhoof tonight. We'd also like to thank the BC Northern Real Estate Board for sponsoring our event. I'm going to turn it over to Robin now, so we get started.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. Yes, my name is Robin Work, and I'm honored to be your moderator for the evening. I'd like to welcome all of you and welcome everyone who is going to be viewing at home. Now, before I introduce our candidates, I would like to just give a quick rundown on the format for the evening. So this forum is respectfully held on the traditional unceded territory of the Sycus First Nation, whose land provides us with a place to live, work, and play. Now the rules are as follows. Number one, the candidate's order of answering questions has been determined by draw and will be rotational. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and this will be done in alphabetical order. The questions for the question and answer period were submitted to the Chamber of Commerce prior to this evening via email or in person, and the Chamber of Commerce or to the Chamber of Commerce office. So questions have been vetted prior to making the question list, and they have been possibly edited for clarity and fairness. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer questions to enable us to ask as many questions as time will permit. The candidates also have these questions in front of them written out, so I will not ask repeatedly a question 6 times to 6 people. So listen closely when I ask that question. So we're hoping to wrap up the question and answer portion approximately 20 to 8. And that gives us time then, for each candidate will have 3 minutes for a closing statement. And this will be done in the opposite order of the opening statements. So there will be no live questions from the floor. And we ask that members of the audience be respectful to all candidates, Chamber of Commerce staff, board members, and volunteers. Audience members who are not respectful will be asked to leave the premises. The Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan entity, and all candidates will be treated equal. So now, before we begin our opening statements, let me quickly introduce our panel. Ladies and gentlemen, in alphabetical order, your candidates for the riding of Caribou Prince George are Angie Benazzo of the New Democratic Party, Todd Doherty of the Conservative Party of Canada, Clinton Emsley of the Liberal Party of Canada, Rui Sands of the People Party of Canada, Kenneth B. Thompson, Independent, and Jake Weens of the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. And we'll get right into our opening statements. The first opening statement will be from Angie Benazzo.
Hello. This is my first debate, so thank you for being here. My name is Angie Benazzo, and I am the NDP candidate for Caribou Prince George. I have been a resident of Northern BC for 20 years, first starting in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, worked my way down at Dawson Creek, BC, and actually making my way to Prince George. I'm currently employed at the Northern Health Authority. My title is nursing assistant and currently working as a mental health support worker in the detox unit at the University Hospital of Northern British Columbia. I have a strong labor activist background. I developed my passion for labor activism at Rotary Manor in Dawson Creek. I have been a well-celebrated shop steward sitting at the table of many alterations. My most successful achievements were guiding Gateway Complex Care through the COVID pandemic and bargaining the last round of collective bargaining, not this round of collective bargaining, but the previous round, the most successful contract for 57,000 union members. In my off time, I volunteer at the NICU as a baby cuddler here in HBC, and I also volunteer as a yoga instructor at the YMCA. As a New Democrat, we are the party that in an earlier minority government brought us the universal healthcare system that does not leave us depending on our bank accounts for medical services. In the last minority government, the NDP successfully expanded that system to include dental care and the beginnings of a pharmacare program for crucial medications. We must and we will continue this fight to improve this existing coverage. Canadians are hit hard here, and in Caribou Prince George, we are equally hit hard as well. We're hurting alongside the rest of the country. At a time when affordable housing...
That's, unfortunately, that's your 2 minutes. So, sorry. Just have to just remind candidates to keep an eye on our lovely assistants up front here with the blue sign is the 30-second warning, and the red sign is time is up. And we're doing this out of fairness and to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So our next opening statement will be from Todd Doherty. You please stand, if you'd like, sure.
Hi, my name is Todd Doherty. I'm the incumbent here at your member of parliament. An honor to be your member of parliament for the last 10 years. This is the fourth time that I'm asking for your support. As many of you know, my wife and I are both from this region. We're both born and raised in Williams Lake. We've stood with you for the last 10 years through good times and difficult times. The last 10 years have been difficult under this Liberal government. I ask you in the audience to take a look around our communities. Does our community look the same as it did 10 years ago? We see an uptick in crime. We see overdoses the leading cause of death for a youth aged 12 to 18 years of age. We have constituents that are having a harder time making ends meet. We've seen countless mills close. Our friends and our neighbors are out of work, all because of harmful policies from Ottawa and Victoria. We have a rough road ahead of us, but hope. We have to have hope, and we have to right the ship. It's whether it is a job, thank you, whether it is a job lost, or a family that is facing an overdose crisis or an epidemic or an addictions crisis within their family. You need somebody that is going to stand with you, that's going to deliver your voice, experience voice in Ottawa. And I've done that for the last 10 years, and I humbly would be asking you for your vote as well, too, as we move forward with this as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And our next opening statement will be from Clinton Emsley.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Clinton. I'm the Liberal candidate representing you for the first time in this riding. As a new resident to the Caribou, I moved here in December 23 from Ontario, and after living there for about 9 years, originally from South Africa. I am a deep community person. I do a lot for communities that I live in, and part of my life's journey is to lift people to do better, to succeed. One of my life's mantras is your success is my success. Without you succeeding, I fail. And that is what I bring to the table. For you as a community is that spirit and that fight. For me to champion the growth and technology improvements that we need for our communities to rise from the slumber that we're in. Our communities are suffering, no doubt about that. And our jobs are under attack. Some bullies down south that we really need to focus on and address at this point in time. And that is going to be a big part of my focus as well, to not just focus on being a politician, but being a community champion for you. So I'm asking for your support in this election as a new guy on the block, a champion proven. I have a Community Leadership Award issued by the PM of Canada in 2018, and that is testament to how I work with communities. I'm not a selfish person. I give constantly, I share my knowledge, and I work with the community to lift the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. And next, we have Rudy Sass.
Good evening, Vanderhoof. My name is Rudy Sands. I'm running as a PPC's candidate. The People's Party of Canada is the only major party who stands for true conservative values and policy. The PPC is determined to build a limited federal government which will cut wasteful spending, to eliminate our national debt, currently at $1.368 trillion. We cannot keep printing money. We cannot continue to fuel inflation. Our dollar is weak and it needs to regain its purchasing power. We are committed to implementing a responsible and sustainable monetary system backed by gold. This includes starting accumulating gold again for our reserves, which are currently at zero. With the BRICS nations just around the corner, most central banks have focused on purchasing more gold. This very first step will allow us to cut taxes in the future. Canada has the most wealth in natural resources per capita in the world, but yet affordability affects every Canadian. We must get back on our feet financially. At this time, I am sure that you will all agree that our country is in real trouble. We need to take a different path. The PPC says yes to our sovereignty, respecting our rights of freedoms, freedom of speech, supporting our veterans, building pipelines. The PPC says no to a tariff war with the US, Paris Accord and other globalist agendas, mass immigration, gender ideology and DEI, the ban on firearms, supply management, and fighting foreign wars. We represent people first, and we are your best insurance policy for Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. And next we have Kenneth Thompson.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Thompson. I'm the Pinel-based lawyer. I'm on the ballot as Kenneth B. Thompson, an independent candidate. Before coming to law, I had a wide variety of life experiences, which has given me a broad perspective of life. One of the reasons why I'm running is that over the last 40 years plus, I have witnessed the degradation of the standard of living for the majority of Canadians, and particularly those living in smaller rural communities. If we allow this trend to continue, the middle class will largely be eliminated. Another reason is that there are persistent issues that are not being addressed. Gradual transformation from public interest being a measure of government policy to that of private interest becoming a decisive factor in deciding policy has been the primary cause of this degradation. Globalization and the consolidation of industries within a few corporate entities has allowed the private sector to now control the world's economy and our economy and dictate government policy. Why am I running as an independent? We're supposed to have a representative democracy. National political parties compete to gain control of parliament, which means that they have to win the large metropolitan cities. The issues specific to constituencies such as Carrick and Prince George are not what wins the party seats in parliament and allows them to fund government or even to be the official office of it. As much as the party representatives may desire to represent their voters in a constituency, they must focus on the issues that the party dictates, or they will no longer be able to sit in caucus or run in the next election as the party nominee. If I'm elected, it is my intention to be a voice for the voters of our constituency and at least have our interests heard. If you wish to learn more about my position on the issues, visit nothing.ca.
Thank you, Ken. And just a reminder as well to the candidates, when you are answering questions or speaking, to hold the mic as close to your mouth as you can, just so that our audience can certainly hear everything that you have to say. So our final opening statement will be from Jake Weens. Good.
Most think that there are only two parties vying for election. As you can see, there are more. The one party, we should call them the little Band-Aid party. They want the Band-Aid to stick till just after the election, and then back to the globalist agenda that nobody ever voted for. The second party, you must call them the big Band-Aid party. Yes, a much bigger Band-Aid will solve some of the economic problems for a little while, but it must be stressed, just a bigger Band-Aid. Deep, deep moral issues underlie all the, in comparison, superficial issues that are the talk of every election cycle. The Christian Heritage Party focuses on the moral issues before all others. There is no future for this country without a change at the heart of our country. What are these moral issues? This country has been pursuing a death culture, both at the beginning of life and at the end of life. Preborn humans in danger of eviction till the very day of birth, uncontrolled, and made, expanding at an alarming rate. The same moral issues at the root of the death culture crisis are also putting the next generation at risk. Young people priced out of the housing market, young people squeezed out of the labor market, young people saddled with an unimaginable debt that our generation refuses to correct. The young people indoctrinated in our schools for woke confusion rather than for career and family and mature civil involvement. We must have legislation that encourages love and service for the other, legislation for the well-being of the next generation. We must choose God's pathways. Our country needs God's blessings far more than simply a better Band-Aid solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, so now we'll move on to our question and answer portion. And so based on the draw, the first respondent to the question will be Todd. And the first question is, what changes do you propose for corporate tax rates and small business rates to support economic growth?
Well, thank you for the question. That's a great question. We have had a prime minister that is on record as saying that small businesses are nothing more than tax cheats. We all know that. We've had 10 years of a policy that has absolutely decimated and killed our small business size and killed the environment for small businesses to invest. We have to do more for that. In Vanderhoof and across our riding, small businesses and resource industries are our economic heartbeat. They need relief, not more red tape. Our leader has said that we will cut the bureaucratic red tape. We will, for every new policy that we introduce, we will cut 2 of them. We'll provide tax relief for small businesses as well. We have to do more to unlock, especially with what's going on south of the border, to unlock our own economic possibilities. And that really is looking after our small businesses that are the heartbeat of our communities and our region. And in terms of small businesses, that includes our farmers, our ranchers, our small stores like Ash with the new self-service store that we have here in town, or the mayor who's got his own small business as well. My wife and I are small business people. We've had small businesses for over 30 years, and it's getting harder and harder to make ends meet. It's getting harder and harder to attract employees, and so we have to be able to do that to be successful.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And so the next answer will be Clint.
Right. As a small business owner myself, this is a personal thing for me, and it's not an easy question to answer. There is no quick fix. It's not a light switch problem that goes on and off when you feel like it. And my priority is to really fight for our small businesses. I mean, we live in a community that thrives on small business. It's the economic backbone of our community, I would say, of the country. But from a country perspective, 80% of Canada's businesses are small. It's only the 20% or more that are big corporate businesses that pay most of the taxes. So that, so saying, is one of my priorities is to fight for a reduction in small business tax rates. It's not on the cards yet, it's in discussion, but it is definitely something that is on the radar, and it is being spoken about so that we can take the measures to the table in terms of saying, how do we as a country, with this current trade war that's happening, increasing our costs on everything, return that to our communities? And there's means and ways to do that by reducing the amount of taxes we have to pay for things. My priority right now is to reduce small business tax rate in a scaled fashion. I'm not sure what the cutoffs are at the moment, but corporations pay 13% tax if you're under $500,000. Now, if we can reduce that to 10% for the under 500,000 companies, that is a massive saving that is immediately translated into our communities. That is a primary thing that I'm going to fight for, and along with our timber industry. So I don't have much more time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Clint. And so next response we will have from Jake.
Okay, corporate tax rates, small business rates. I think we would all be helped if the whole tax system were made a whole lot simpler. I'm sure you, like me, we spend 2 days every year calculating our taxes. We need to simplify the system, and that would prevent a lot of the concerns regarding some of the things mentioned. And for small businesses, I think there should be an incentive. They are the chief employment agencies in our country. They need incentives, especially new ones starting up.
Okay, thank you, Jake. And next response we have Angie.
The past 3 governments have given massive corporate tax rates to big deal corporations. The NDP party is looking to tax corporations, to tax the billionaires. The party line is to cut small business taxes. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And now over to Rudy.
Not to sound like a broken record, I do agree that we need to simplify all the tax format. But everything starts at the base where we have to lower our deficit. It's the only way we can lower taxes overall. The PPC is committed to bring down corporate tax rates from 15 to 10%. And hopefully that filters down to small businesses. When it comes to small businesses, I want to emphasize the importance of individual responsibilities that we all share. And that's to shop locally, support your local business. It might be a little bit more money, but it tastes a lot better. And pay cash. Much easier for businesses to run with cash. Also, once we're able to get our debt down, interest rates will go down, make it easier for businesses to start with a lower interest rate for loans.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy. And for the final response to that question, we have Ken.
Okay, I decided to run as a candidate just in December. I thought I was going to have a little bit more time to prepare a candidate. So some of these issues I haven't given a lot of thought to. Other issues I've given a lot of thought to. In terms of tax rates payable by corporations or small businesses, that's one of the areas that I haven't really spent a lot of time in. Although in my past careers, I have been a small businessman. And there are some benefits that are accrued to small businesses which help the small business get off the ground and try to begin with. I think we're making kind of the big mistake in terms of larger corporations, because most of those corporations are actually based outside of Canada, and we're watching those dollars leave to Canada, and they're not being properly taxed. That's so one thing we can do, and perhaps when more thought is given to that, so there can be a rebalancing of the burden of taxes between corporations, small businesses, and individual taxpayers. I'm certainly I'm open to a change of hard organizations as I become more informed into them.
All right, thank you, Ken. And so we're on to our second question here. So given the significant impact of mill closures and job losses on communities in northern BC, What specific policies will you implement to support sustainable forestry practices and ensure economic stability for affected workers? And for the first response, we're looking to Clint now.
I'm just put on the spot there. The timber industry is the backbone of our society, and without that, everything else crumbles. That is the reality we're sitting with. And the trade war that we're sitting in at the moment is a direct attack on our timber industry. The tariff of 25% for our timber to go south, where it's traditionally gone for years and years and years, is now costing more, which directly puts our jobs at risk. So how do we fix that? The Premier of BC and Marconi met last week, and it has been decided that they will work together to break down the interprovincial trade barriers. There's also a plan for the government to build 500,000 new homes per year for the next 10 years by using our own lumber. So that means our lumber can go east instead of south, into our own country, into our own economy, in line with building our economy stronger, so that we can become a leading economy in the G7 without relying on the USA. That relationship is broken. It's over. The trust between Canada and the USA is gone, and we will never go back to that. We've been let down, we were caught with our pants down, and now we need to fight and build and develop our own economy within Canada, because we can. Instead of operating as 13 mini countries, is operate as one. Break down those barriers where we couldn't do stuff between ourselves and start finding the new trade partners east and west of Canada through our ports.
Thank you very much, Clint. And so, Jake, we'll look to you for answer now.
Just very briefly, I think every area, every regional area should be a unit, primarily a unit for itself, and the resources within that region should be for that region. They should not be shipped outside the region. If there's need for them here, it should not be shipped to China or whatever. They need to be reserved for that region, first of all. So in other words, your logs would not be shipped to Prince George, they would be used here. And another thing for a more effective forestry industry, we should encourage secondary industries. Let's make something out of the 2x4s and the 2x10s. Maybe let's develop other industries, and those industries need to be supported significantly.
Okay, thank you very much, Jake, and over to Angie.
We first originally got hit with a round of tariffs in Trump's first administration. So this is just compounding the effect of the mill closures that exist in this region, throwing lots of workers out of good paying jobs. The NDP advocate for a harvesting of forests to mills here in our community, to building housing in this community, creating good jobs for people to save for the future. We also need to look at expanding into global markets. As said earlier, we are relying too heavily on the United States for our lumber. Thank you.
And thank you, Angie, and over to Rudy.
While her weaker dollar is certainly attractive for foreign buyers, mainly the USA, which is true as our biggest customer, it doesn't really benefit the industry which has higher operating costs. Heavy equipment purchases, replacement parts, and fuel imports cost a lot when you have a weak dollar. We don't produce enough fuel to sustain that forestry. We need to eliminate the carbon pricing and carbon emissions targets to give the forestry industry a break. Try to give an incentive to companies that can afford to operate in Canada as opposed to the U.S. Speaking of the U.S., PBC's committed to come to the table and talk to resolve this trade war, which is, in our view, complete nonsense.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Rudy, and over to Ken.
To begin with, so I want to extend many thanks to a reporter with PG Citizen, James Steidel. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. But he an article on February 28th of this year in the September edition on the PC Citizen entitled "Small Mill Turncoats Handing in Industry Over to the U.S." which documents how the elite have been undermining the well-being of Canadians. It's West Fraser, Canfor, their primary business now steps down in the southern states. And how are they milling the wood down there? With mills that they took out of northern BC. The citizen. That's a problem for us, especially with this 34% out duty that the Americans are now imposing on our softwood lumber causing the border heading into the States. Thankfully, it's getting not a thing to really say thanks for, but the problems that the Americans had with natural disaster has created a market which will sustain some flow of product across the border because there's that need to. That still exists. But more importantly, we got to start using our lumber constructively in Canada. Because according to some of the reports that I've heard, there's over 1 million housing units, or we have a shortage of over 1 million housing units. We could be using that softwood lumber to build houses for Canadians. And there we could build them quite inexpensively. After the Second World War, there was a housing program that was put in place that created a lot of housing in short order, and that would consume one heck of a lot of lumber and bring that to Nelson.
Yeah. Thank you, Ken. And for the final response, we have Todd.
Hey. Well, I'm not quite sure I have enough time to address some of the stuff that I've listened to tonight. I'm sorry, I'm pretty frustrated. I've fought for 10 years for our families and our communities that have been decimated by the Liberal government's failure to secure a softwood lumber agreement. The provincial NDP stumpage fees have absolutely decimated our forestry producers and targeted the hardworking families that depended on forestry to put food on their table and a roof over their house. BC's is the largest producer of softwood in our country. 64% of that goes across to the south, to the U.S. We've lost tens of thousands of jobs here because of Liberal policies and their failure to get a softwood lumber agreement. Glenn, I'm not sure if you understand the party that you're running for, because I have stood in the House of Commons and fought for every family that have lost their jobs for the last 10 years. How many councils and mayors and communities have you guys met with that these communities have lost their tax base? And so they can't fund programs or services. This is the lifeblood of our communities. And we have people up here that are talking about this is what I'm going to do. You have no idea the parties that you're running for, because they've absolutely waged war on our natural resources. Prime Minister Trudeau stood up and said that the very first speech that he said on the world stage, that under his leadership, Canada become known more for our resourcefulness than our natural resources. Boy, that's true. We have to do everything in our power to make sure that we unlock the potential of our Canadian producers. We have to secure a softwood lumber agreement that has sat for 10 years without an agreement.
Sorry, Todd. That's
Unbelievable.
done. And we're on to our third question. How will your party address the current trade tensions between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada? And what steps will you take to protect Canadian business? And the first response will be for Jake.
The first thing I would like to say is that Canada never could have existed and never again will exist if we do not rebuild our trade relationship with the U.S. The current tension should be seen as temporary, and we need to treat it in such a way so that it will heal as soon as possible. And when you listen to the news, many countries have come to the U.S. in agreement with an understanding what the U.S. is trying to do. They're trying to fix their own fiscal house, and it's in far worse shape than Canada. And Canada should be a little bit more understanding what they're trying to do. Okay, I wish our government was as diligent in trying to solve our problems as that administration is trying to solve theirs. You know, all this talk about them being bullies and we being cheated and so on will not heal the relationship. We need to deal with this in such a way so that the relationship will heal as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Jake, and over to Angie.
The NDP supports dollar for dollar, tariff for tariff, retaliatory motions. The NDP wish to foster the relationships globally with other stable trading partners. How does this protect Canadian businesses? By getting Canadian product to those global markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, and over to Rudy.
So,
The PPC is in the position that we need to talk to the U.S. administration primarily and Mexico right away. We're willing to come to the table and fix these issues. We cannot sustain a tariff war with the U.S. Their GDP is 10 times bigger than ours, and they only depend on our economy for a fraction as opposed to us depending on them. It's economic suicide to try and take them on. They are trying to get their business in order. We don't have to understand it. We don't have to respect it. Well, we should respect it, but we should certainly pay attention to it. We have to be more self-sufficient with our own economy and our own products, because relying on other nations is a big risk, as we found out. So we want to come to the table right away and work out a deal. There's no reason why we can't. And again, a tariff war is out of the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And so Ken is next, and Ken, make sure to hold that mic nice and close so that everybody can hear you.
I'll do my best. First off, we got to stay calm. Trump is using a sledgehammer to try to solve a problem that really requires a delicate approach. The economics of the United States are a disaster at this point. You can understand why he's taken this position. He's got a huge problem to try to resolve. Within the next few years, the U.S. economy could face bankruptcy. So what we have to do is stay calm, because this technique, his approaches to resolving these questions, isn't going to last very long, because they're going to backfire on the states and make their situation even worse. Next thing we have to do is, why don't we put some export duties on products that the Americans really need from us? There are all refineries on the coast of what do you call it now, the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America. So their refineries need our oil. If we put an export duty on those products, they'll still have to buy them from us. But then we can take those funds to help our nation diversify its economy. Our whole problem is that we've left ourselves to be exposed to this kind of manipulation because we've allowed large corporations to dominate what's going on in terms of our economy. So there's countless examples of how we've lost diversity in our economy. Not the least of this is at one point Canada was the second largest producer of shipped footwear in the world. We barely produce anything anymore. So we just have to take a longer view and get our house back in order. We need to diversify our economy so we're not competitive.
Sorry, Ken, that's time. And over to you, Todd. Our leader's been very clear. You can't predict what's going to come out of Donald Trump. And I think what we have to do is we have to focus on what we can control, and that's here at home. Making sure that we're unlocking our potential here at home, creating removing the barriers to interprovincial trade, making sure we're unleashing the potential of our own small businesses here at home, making sure that we're looking to other markets. We're not going to be able to solve what Donald Trump is doing, but we will do dollar for dollar tariffs. We'll make sure that we stand up to them, but we're not going to concern ourselves and light our hair on fire while it'll be a short fire for me. But I think what we need to do is, I think cooler heads have to prevail, and we have to make sure that we take care of our own house first, and start looking inwards on how we solve that here at home. And the way to do that is unlocking the potential of Canadian businesses and Canadians. Thanks. Okay, thank you, Todd. And for the final response to that question, we have Clint.
Canada comes first. We come first. And that is the response of the Liberal Party, is to fight, to protect, and to build. Those are the three key principles that are in motion. Things are happening behind each one of those principles to ensure that we put Canada first, that we work internally to build a big economy, which we do have already. We just need to use it properly, and to make sure that we respectfully respond to the tariff war that is happening from the US. We understand that they have problems, but the manner in which they are executing the resolutions leaves much to be desired. And our response is a professional one. It's a kind approach, it's non-aggressive, and that is the only way to deal with a confrontational person, is to stand back and smile, because that's what we do. We say sorry and we carry on. We will not be the 51st state. We will not become part of America. That is our response. That is our firm stance in protecting our sovereignty as a country. There are many things in motion to ensure that we will become the leading economy in the G7. We are speaking with all our partners, with all our trade industries across the world, to find new trade routes that are viable for us as a country. We're not saying we will not deal with the US ever again. We're just finding other ways so that we do not get let down like we have right now.
All right, thank you, Clint, and we're on to our next question. Given the urgent need to address climate change, what specific policies will you implement to reduce carbon emissions, and where do you or your party stand on the carbon tax? And we're going to begin with Angie.
Under the current government's climate action plan, they've seen more and more extreme climate disasters happening. Does the carbon tax work? I'm not so sure about that. Look at the fires that are happening in British Columbia. Look at the floods that are happening out east. There have been more people in Prince George that are deeply celebrating the cut in carbon tax. So is this an effort to buy votes? And does it make a difference? I'm not a climate scientist. I can't answer those questions. Jagmeet has said we need to make the big polluters pay because under the current government, $12 billion in tax breaks was handed to oil and gas companies. So where's that climate action plan getting us? I have a large carbon footprint. If you look at my social media, I was just in Egypt last year. I flew there in an airplane. So I'm just as big as a polluter as anybody else. But I'm not sure if the current policies around taxation are working, and I don't know what the answer is.
Okay, thank you, Angie. And the next response over to Rudy.
Well, I spent enough time in court as a deputy sheriff to know that this is a leading question. And if you don't know what that is, we'll just have to Google it. The climate has always changed. The PPC is committed to abolishing the carbon tax entirely and the Paris Accord. Withdraw from all climate change agreements. CO2 is not a pollutant. It's essential for life. It's plant food. Optimal plant life is 1,000 to 1,500 parts per million of CO2. The atmosphere is currently at 427 parts per million, and it makes up only 0.04%. We can't spend our time limiting our industries and our world and based on assumed science that ignores other scientists, thousands of them, that don't agree with these claims.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Rudy. And next response for Ken.
We've got to start looking at the overall solution. It isn't just the climate that is suffering, it's our land and our water that's also suffering. So we have become a people of waste. All of our activities oftentimes result in needless waste. We have built cities and organized our population and our industries in such a way that we have to travel great distances. Because look at what's happening with even the provincial government here. It's concentrated in Victoria and it has offices all over the place. So what we've done here is we've created a mass city which creates a lot of pollution. Why not take departments of the government and put them in smaller communities where people can actually walk to work, whether it even be the winter or the summer? Why aren't we adopting more efficient forms of transportation in this country instead of relying so heavily on individual vehicles to move people around? It's many other countries around the world are very dependent upon trains. Up here, we've basically lost train service. We've lost bus service. These kinds of things have to be reinstituted if we're going to get the pollution question under control. That's my final comment.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And now over to Ty.
We've been very clear. If you haven't heard our saying, what our leader has said, we're going to axe the tax. Mark Carney said that he eliminated the tax. He has not eliminated the tax. You have to. It's legislation, so you have to have Parliament running to be able to eliminate it. So all he's done is zero balanced it, which we know with his previous history of net zero, and he's a fan of net zero. It'll likely come back. We are going to axe the carbon tax because punishing those who live in rural, remote areas or Canadians by an unfair carbon tax that has not dropped any emissions at all. The Liberals in the last 10 years have failed to meet any emission targets that they have set. The best way that we can do this is develop technology, develop sustainable energy that we can sell to some of the greatest polluters in the world. We have countries that are so dependent on foreign oil, dirty foreign oil. And our oil and gas and our oil that we produce here sustainably produced by just supplying the world with LNG, clean LNG, or oil and gas from Canada, we're helping with the climate change, the world climate change issue. I think Angie said it earlier on. Has that carbon tax eliminated any of the wildfires that we see, any of the flooding that we see in our areas? No, it hasn't. So it punishes those of us that live in rural, remote areas. We're overtaxed. We need to develop new technology. We can use greener construction techniques as well to reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions. But there's more that we can do individually, and there's more that can be done provincially and federal.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And Clint.
On Mark Carney's first day, he axed the tax, and we saw an immediate reduction in our fuel prices in the following weeks. I noticed it. I'm sure many others did too. So it was an immediate benefit. But this was a controversial tax, and not many people agreed with it, which is why he has axed it. However, the tax for carbon footprints is still in place on corporations that are known aggressors in polluting our environments. Global warming is a real thing, and it's not just about what we do here in our little community or what we do in Canada. It is a global stance. We have to change the way everyone around the world deals with global warming, because if only we do it, it's not going to make any difference. And that's what these accords are about, is changing consumerism. We as people drive global warming because we demand things when we purchase stuff. Packaging, fuel, everything that we use causes global warming. And the only easy way to solve global warming is to stop buying the things that cause it. That's not an easy problem to solve because we need to make personal choices. As an environmental champion, I follow an ecological life in making sure we use smart fuel and diesel vehicles and reduce our packaging, recycle as much as we can. Those are personal choices, but does everybody do it? No. As a government, we can't force people to do things, but we can put mechanisms and controls on the corporations that produce the things that we use, and that is still under discussion.
Okay, thank you, Clint. And last response to that question is from Jake.
Okay, climate change. I taught geography in high school, and then I taught man-made climate change, but since then I've read quite a bit, and man-made climate change is to a large degree not real. Okay, what we need to do with this whole topic of climate change, we need to support both sides of the question. Okay, support both sides in that research. And this has nothing to do with the question of pollution. We need to watch our pollution. We need to watch our high levels of consumerism. Our lives are dependent far too much on stuff. We need to live far more for people, for relationships, for family, and things like that. That's where we get far more meaning than all this stuff. We need to reduce our consumerism levels. That would help a lot.
All right, thank you, Jake. And so we're now on to our fifth question. Will your party change or update any federal regulations to help expedite timelines for resource project development? If so, how will you achieve this while maintaining high environmental protection standards and respect for Indigenous rights consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? And for this question, we're going to lead off with Rudy.
Well, the PPC supports the Indigenous communities and the people. Under it is a UN agenda, and the People's Party does not support the UN initiatives. We want to stay away from the UN. It's a direct attack on our sovereignty as a nation. So we don't support UNDRIP. That being said, we support Indigenous people, as I said. In order to facilitate that, we need to get rid of unreasonable environmental red tape, which slows down the process. we'd rather directly involve the Indigenous community and the people in order to benefit them directly. We would work with them as opposed to working with the UN. Much rather work with Indigenous people from this country than unelected globalists. So that's what we would do. We want to talk and make sure the Indigenous community benefits from it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rudy, and over to Ken.
First off, I'm obviously not a political party, and so I'm not going to be changing or updating any federal regulations, although I can advocate. And what I would advocate for is we have compiled a lot of data over the last few decades, which gives us a head start on any environmental evaluation that we need to do. I would not go back and reduce the rigorous scrutiny of proposals. So oftentimes they're driven by a corporation who wants to take the cheapest and most profitable means of doing something. Take an example of pipeline. A pipeline has many, many ways of getting to its destination. So it's the duplicating of the Trans Mountain pipeline through the Rockies, where it's a lot of obstacles and a lot of risk. Why didn't we put that pipeline along maybe the Yellowhead Pass, or maybe a running up through Dawson Creek? I know it wouldn't be as cheap for the corporation, but it would certainly be a lot more environmentally sound. So I would keep the regulations that we have. I just start to use the data that is available so that we can get a head start on evaluating projects. If we keep having to start again as soon as a project is proposed, that's where the time comes in. But we've got lots of data, and if we properly use that data, we can shorten the time without weakening our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and over to Todd.
First and foremost, we're going to scrap the No Pipelines Bill C-69 that the Liberals implemented within their first term in 2050. We're going to unlock the potential for these massive projects, these major projects to take place. They are economic generators for all of our communities up and down the lines of whether it's a pipeline, whether it's LNG, whether it's a forestry project or what have you. We're going to create one-stop shop. We're going to eliminate the bureaucratic red tape where there's multiple layers in terms of programs that a proponent has to go through that leads to lengthy timelines in terms of project approval. We've guaranteed that we're going to cut 25% of the bureaucratic red tape with that one-stop shop. And in terms of our First Nations, they have to be at the table, not just when the project begins, but at the very beginning. We've announced that proponents will have to pay a tax to or a fee to any First Nation along the way. They'll be true partners in all sense of the word. We have to do that, and it's the right thing to do. Economic prosperity for all.
All right, thank you, Todd, and over to Clint.
Mark Carney announced last week major investments into our energy sectors. And this is part of building Canada Stronger, is to use our resources to generate a commodity that we can sell to the world. Instead of letting it sit and do nothing or go to the US, we have the ability to sell our energy. We're known for our energies. Now, with that, he's announced the speeding up of decision-making processes and increasing the First Nations grant funding from $5 million to $10 billion so that they've got more access to these projects. Unfortunately, with environmental projects come risk assessments, and our environment is super important to us, along with our First Nations, because a lot of these projects move through their hands, and they are a key component of decision making in a lot of these projects. Their rights are important to us and will always be important to us. We are not going to do things, we are not going to force things onto the First Nations community simply for the sake of a project. That is not going to happen. But in becoming a superpower, that is our opportunity to show the world that we have what it takes to be our own economy. We have a commodity that is in demand, and the world needs energy. We have it. Let's sell it. We need to build our economy to be able to sell it.
Thank you. And then over to Jake.
And just briefly, I do not think the First Nations people should hold our economic development hostage. Okay, we need to work towards becoming a one people. Okay, environmental protection standards, they got out of hand. How long did it take to get Site C off the ground? 20, 25 years? That's it's unrealistic. Okay, we need to shorten significantly, and we need to work, get the UN out of Canada. That we do not need the UN, we need to become a sovereign nation ourselves. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jake. And for the final word on this, we have Angie.
There will be no economic resource development without First Nations at the table. First Nations are key to developing our resources, and they need to be at that table. What needs to be dismantled is the archaic, ancient bureaucratic process that is at place, limiting development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angie. And so we're on to our next question. What specific measures will you implement to address the ongoing healthcare worker shortage? And how will you ensure that rural and underserved communities receive adequate medical care? And for the first response, we're over to Cam.
Yes, first and foremost, that the delivery of medical care is under the control of the provinces. In order to solve these issues of inadequate access to health care, there were a variety of solutions. Some of them are being implemented by some of the provinces right now. It's in a number of the provinces, pharmacists have gained a great deal more authority to prescribe drugs and provide them without a patient having to go back to the doctor. A number of provinces have implemented programs which have extended the fill out to what responsibilities nurses can assume. These are short-term solutions, but we've got longer-term solutions as well. One, we need to start building universities and schools that are training nurses and doctors. So I don't know what it's like in terms, I don't have the figures for it, but I know in terms of law, when I went to Thompson-Urban University, there hadn't been a new law school built in Canada in over 35 years, despite the population of the country more than doubling. Well, I think we've got that same problem within the delivery of healthcare within this country. So we've got to start reinvesting in training more people, doctors and nurses. And secondly, or lastly, is we've got to really start to emphasize preemptive care for people. Let's encourage proper lifestyles, make it possible for people with proper lifestyles, instead of being flooded with those processed foods that aren't healthy for us. Let's start living off our local production.
Okay, thank you, Ken, and over to Todd.
Well, over 7 million Canadians are without a doctor. That's unacceptable. Our province, our communities, how many times has our ER closed because of the doctor shortage? We have to find a way to get doctors, to get nurses into our country. Our leader is committed to launching the Blue Seal program, which will look at ensuring our foreign credentialed doctors and nurses that are here already have a fast track way to be able to serve our country or our communities and and solve the healthcare crisis that we have. In terms of mental health, I think that many of you, if you follow me, you know that mental health is my passion. We won't solve the addictions crisis or the mental health crisis until we start treating mental health in parity with physical health. We have to look at the root cause of what is causing this. The biggest issue that we have right now in terms of our country, and in terms of healthcare, is that you can't access a doctor. So many Canadians have no access to a doctor. And through our Blue Seal program, we'll make sure that for credentialed doctors and nurses have a fast track to work in our rural and urban communities.
Thanks, Todd. Over to you, Clint.
This is a personal thing for me as well, because I do not have a doctor. And I have a spouse that works in mental health, so I hear the stories of the challenges every single day. They're real things, they're real people, and they need real solutions. My plan is to fight to nationalize our healthcare regulator. The bigger problem that we have is the healthcare profession has independent regulators in every single province, which locks your healthcare provider to that place. They cannot work in another province. It's not easy to jump ship and go and live somewhere else and work somewhere else. If we can break down those barriers in terms of inter-country migration, inter-provincial migration, we can perhaps attract way more healthcare workers to our communities. That is one solution. The next solution is part of our immigration system, is create specific rural immigration programs for healthcare practitioners that have consequence attached to them. For example, bringing in a doctor to a rural community through these programs, you are tied into that community for 5 years, making sure that they stay there. Because the bigger problem we have is we get doctors in, they stay a month or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and they leave. And then there's no replacement. And then the next one leaves, and there's no replacement, and then suddenly the ER closes. These are bigger societal issues, and we do not have enough resources within Canada to solve it. We need our immigration system to work with fixing the problem.
Thank you, Clint. And next we have Jake.
Okay, it's really very easy. We need to rehire the nurses that were laid off because of the COVID ideological crisis. We need to rehire the doctors that lost their credentials through that ideologically driven crisis. And that most jurisdictions have done that. Why hasn't BC? Why are we still ideologically driven process? Okay, maybe one for local and smaller communities, expand the nurse practitioner program to supply there.
Okay, thank you, Jake. And over to Angie.
The provinces fund their health care by transfer payments coming from Ottawa. We need a strong social voice in the House to make sure that those transfer payments continue to the provinces so they may fund their health care. Full stop. Unvaccinated healthcare workers are allowed to come back and work on the floor. If we block pharmacare and dental care programs by voting no, people's mental health and other health issues will continue to decline. By fixing our immigration policies, we will have more talent on our shop floors working to deliver our health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And Rudy, you have the last response to this question.
Well, healthcare is the responsibility of provinces and territories. That would promote accountability, hold them responsible for managing the money that's currently being provided to them by the federal government, but it should fall onto the responsibility of the provinces and territories. Also, the PPC wants to encourage a mix of private and public system, like other developed countries. This would greatly help dealing with wait times. Another problem, an obvious one, is mass immigration. I'm an immigrant, so I'm not anti-immigration by all means, but under the current numbers, it's absolutely not sustainable. And yes, some nurses are allowed to work, have been invited to work back at the healthcare system after they're fired from the COVID policies. I myself was out of work for 17 months without pay for the same reason. They couldn't fire me though. That was over 3,000 of them. How many came back? Probably not very many. Simply unacceptable. Bonnie Henry, I'm sorry, but you have to go.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And now we're on to our 7th question. By the time that the polls close in BC, the election has already been decided. Because of the current electoral system, many people in BC feel that their vote does not count, so they do not vote. How can the electoral system be changed so that the province of BC can feel that their votes count and that we will be heard? And to lead us off, we have talked.
Well, here again is another failed promise of Justin Trudeau when he said that 2015 election would be the last election under the first past the post. An all-party committee was struck to review electoral reform, and when the outcomes that came out of that committee, or the suggestions that came out of that committee, were not the Liberals liking, that committee was disbanded. I too am frustrated with the fact that Ontario and Quebec seem to control our fate here in the West. It is frustrating. It's deeply frustrating. But the only way that we can actually have true electoral reform is to put it to the people in a referendum. And that's the only way that we can honestly do it. A politician, a group of politicians, should not be the ones that are deciding this. Only through an electoral reform referendum would be the right way of doing it.
All right, thanks, Todd. And the next response is from Clint.
These are personal things that excite people most of times, and there's no real easy solution. Like Todd said, a reform or a referendum is probably the best solution for these kinds of problems, but my personal opinion is one person equals one vote, and that is the fair way to do things. We can't inflate votes simply for the sake of inflating a vote. That doesn't make any sense. We have 40 million people in Canada, and if each one of them voted, there would be 40 million votes. The solution comes in teaching and encouraging people to vote, not to sit back, not to feel ignored, not to feel that their vote is not worth anything. Every vote matters, and that is the important message.
Okay, thank you very much, Clint, and over to Jake.
I think if MPs need to be set free from party discipline. So when we vote for the person we vote for, he represents us, not the party. That would make a huge difference in how we vote, because we would want people in our parliament that would listen to us, not simply rubber stamp what the premier or what the MP or what the prime minister wants. We need to set them free. Okay, and I think another thing is we need to have an elected Senate, equal elected Senate.
Okay, thank you, Jake. And Angie.
Justin Trudeau said that his biggest regret was not following through on his promises for electoral reform. I believe it's very difficult for the government to try and fix this. The NDP has promised to revive this motion that has come across the floor and to get this fixed. So by the next time we sit down as a panel, we will have electoral reform.
All right, thank you, Angie. And over to Rudy.
Well, it's true that by the time the results get here, it is over. One way we could just hold it to the next day and just have all the totals be announced at the same time, and it'll be a big surprise. Good. Other countries have different voting systems, different ways to elect their members and such, and years. Currently, I don't think our system truly represents fairly the needs of different people in different areas. So I would be open to taking a look at how we can change that for sure. But because the election is decided in back east, as we said, and you'll know the results, one way you can make changes to vote for me in the PPC. I'll be your best insurance policy in Ottawa.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And the final word on this is for Ken.
Well, the question, how can the electoral system be changed so that provinces, BC can feel that their votes should count and that they will be heard? Well, we can amend the Elections Act so that there is no reporting of results until the polls close in the last province, which was BC. And there wouldn't be this difficulty of people feeling, well, the government's already been decided, the election's been decided. When we cast our votes in BC, nobody knows how the vote went. But most importantly, people have to feel that they are choosing a representative to represent them in the parliament. Regardless of whether their representative is in the majority or in opposition or standing as an independent, the person that they elect is actually going to represent them in parliament to give them a voice.
Okay, thank you. And we're on to our next question. With the rise in the cost of living, how will your party support low-income families and seniors? And will the housing shortage in northern BC be part of the equation? And to begin, we'll start with Clint.
Cost of living affects all of us, each and every one of us, every single day. And there's no short-term solution to fix that. COVID drove our prices through the roof because demand went up and supply went down, and everything got more expensive, and it hasn't really come down. Now we have a trade war, which is just compounding that problem and making things more expensive, which most of us can't afford. Mark Carney has already reduced the taxes for the middle income brackets and the working class, which puts $800 more on the table of a double income family per year. It's not huge, but it's something. I would also push to lift the threshold of where taxes begin to start being paid on our personal incomes, so that there's a bigger component of our society that don't have to pay tax. That is an immediate money back in your pocket on an annual basis. The government has already committed to building 500,000 new homes a year, which is exponential employment opportunities within our societies. It's business, it's sales, it's new skills, it's people that need to be employed to build these houses. Those are all income opportunities. By using our lumber and our timber from this province, because that's our commodity, that is our power, that is our value. And if we can create a viable sales channel for our timber that reinvigorates our timber industries and restarts the mills and the pulp mills and all the things that have disappeared over the last 20 years, then that is an immediate investment into our communities.
Sorry, Clint, that's time on that question, and now we'll go over to Jay.
First of all, control inflation. That will help low-income families. Control immigration. That will help them. And when lower-end houses are on the block for sale, then people looking for their own home should be given priority than landlords who want to be missed.
Thank you very much, Jake, and over to Angie.
The party has committed to eliminating the GST on groceries, home heating, diapers, other essentials that Canadian families rely on. The NDP is also committed to increasing the pension payout and the old age security pension, not reducing it or making Canadians working longer to access it.
Thank you, Angie. Rudy?
Well, the federal government's job is not to just print money, as I said before. I just supply money to, well, it's not money, it's currency. We don't have money. Like I said, we don't have any gold in the vault. But to fix this problem, when we talk about cost of living, it's directly the result of inflation, and that's printing money. Again, I made a mistake. It's printing currency. When it comes to seniors, they rely on pensions and benefits. And they pay high taxes, property taxes, and those payments just don't keep up with inflation. So there's no easy solution. We have to cut our spending, we have to cut inflation, and we have to cut the Bank of Canada's inflation target from 2% to 0%. As far as BC having a house shortage, well, again, it is mass immigration. It takes up a lot of housing, and it drives up the costs. Same with foreign buyers. We have to step in and prioritize Canadians, make sure we can have affordable living. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. And over to Ken.
Yes. First, we got to start looking at building affordable housing. And affordable housing needs to be built by not large developers, land developers. They price in Iowa as a contractor, subcontractor. And they watch contractors take the first 45% off of any contract or their margin on building that house. We can, if we utilize government resources to properly manage the development of small homes that were built like on the same kind of plans that existed after the Second World War. We can build a heck of a lot of homes, and we can do that very inexpensively, and we don't need to have private interests getting involved in pricing these units. We can provide these units to large numbers of people in our country inexpensively. And that's going to be particularly important to youth who are trying to start out in life. They're going to need some place to go, some property that they can purchase, which is not going to cost them their everything. Another thing we need to do is there has to be affordable child care for single and low-income mothers. It's that there's no opportunity for these families to develop if they have to pay out as much as they make in a day on daycare. That's what we need to do, is give these people a chance by providing affordable child care. And the last thing is targeted transfers. The federal government can provide funding to increase social assistance to people in inexpensive living areas.
Thank you, Ken. And for the final word on this, we have Todd.
Thanks. The last 10 years, life has become unaffordable in our country. 2/3 of Canadians are $200 away from insolvency at the end of every month. Rents have doubled, and in some markets even tripled. Cost of houses have doubled. The Canadian dream of owning a house is slipping away for our youth. It used to be that you would have a mortgage for 25 years. Now it takes you 25 years to raise the funds, even put a down payment on a house. It's unacceptable. I was at Ceylon Foods the other day, and there was a senior in front of me buying groceries. She had one bag of groceries, and she couldn't afford to pay for it. One bag of groceries. That's crazy. And why is it? Because of the tax system, under the carbon tax, the taxes that are on your dollar just doesn't go as far as it should. So we will work with with our municipalities to incentivize them to build more affordable housing. We're going to lower the income tax by 15%. We're going to allow seniors, we're going to keep the retirement age at 65, and we're going to allow seniors to earn a further $34,000 tax rate. We're to try and do whatever we can to lower the cost of living on Canadians, of providing tax breaks, of making life more affordable for you, your family. We have to do that. We have to stop printing money. Inflation, everything has gone up. This government has spent we're printing money. The money grows on trees. The cupboards are bare, and we will implement a dollar for dollar. For every dollar we spend, we will find a wasteful spending and cut that.
I'm sorry, Todd. Thank you. So we have, I think we have time for one more question here. And the question is, what is your stance on the current immigration policy changes, and how will you ensure that the policies will not affect the rural areas? And to lead us off, we'll start with Jake.
I'm going to pass, because I quite know what you're talking about. Sorry, I'm going to pass.
Okay, fair enough. Over to Angie.
Well, immigration's kind of a mess, eh? Under the current government, there was bring in everybody, we don't have housing, we don't have health care, move them out. And at present, there's 925,000 people that are stuck trying to get into Canada. A lot of these people have healthcare tickets, and they would be tremendously useful to us on the healthcare floor. I've heard other stories from Tim Hortons owners that their Filipino workers are being asked to become fluent in French when they're barely fluent in English to stay in the country. Can we just figure it out? Whatever government gets in, can we figure out immigration? Because our country relies on immigration. This is what pays for our social policies. So, where do I land on it? Open the doors. We need our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. And over to Rudy.
Trying to figure out if it's another leading question here. We're implying that we have immigration policies. Not so sure we do. Like I said, I'm an immigrant. I left my country of birth, France, and that was 35 years ago, because of the problems largely caused by immigration. If you took a look at Europe now, you would get a sense of what's going on. We can't sustain that. It's nothing to do. We want people, all people are welcome to join us and become Canadians and take part in being part of this beautiful nation that we have. We're very lucky. But we can't do it at this rate. We simply cannot do it at this rate. It impacts absolutely every facet of our society. We cannot do it. It's that simple. You need to fix it.
Okay, thank you, Rudy, and over to Ken.
Yes, that's for a number of years there, we were bringing in far too many immigrants into the country. We need, well, immigrants benefit our country. So bringing in immigrants does help us grow as a country, and there's a lot of productivity in Canada that hasn't been realized because of lack of population. But at the same time, when we're bringing in 500,000 people a year, when there's inadequate housing and services for Canadians living here, that doesn't make sense. We have to have policies that actually, take into account what is the current situation in Canada. Can we actually support an immigrant inflow at a particular time? And now, I think this is what happened here in terms of immigration is a very good example but where private interest has moved aside public interest, it's up. If the government had really been considering public interest first, these issues of housing and services would have been taken into consideration. But what was taken into consideration is that industry wanted these immigrants to come to grow their market, to grow their businesses, to find a cheap labor pool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken, and over to Todd.
Thank you. We need immigration to fill some of our labor market issues that we have, but it has to be targeted, has to be measured. And I think, as Ken has mentioned, that one of the things that we need to look at is we can't open the floodgates and just expect those that are coming into our country to be able to succeed. You know, we want to make sure that when they come into our country, that they're able to have that Canadian dreaming. You'll have an immigrant coming in and not be able to have access to a doctor, not be able to have access to language services, not be able to have access to a job. Many of these families that send their children over to Canada, they spend their life savings to get their children here or their family members here. And then they're targeted by immigration lawyers or immigration consultants. We need to find a way to work with our smaller communities that need immigrants to fill the labor market challenges. You know, Vanderhoof alone needs immigrants to fill the labor shortages that we have. They work in our farms, they work in our mills, they become doctors, they become nurses, they work here. You know, we've got a great local business person such as Ash, who now is employing other community members. He's spent his time here. He loves this community. Conservatives will fix our broken immigration program, bring it down to more targeted levels, around about 250 to 300,000 per year. We need to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to fill the gaps in our labor market woes, to make sure that we're filling that, but we have to do it responsibly. And what we've seen in the last 10 years is opening the floodgates, and we can't do that.
Thank you, Todd. And for the final word on this question, over to Clint.
This is a personal question to me because I actually work in the immigration industry. I've been in this industry for 10 years and I know our immigration system inside out. I published a white paper on this topic this November last year, so if you're interested to read it, search my name in the white paper and you should find it. It's about reforming Canada's immigration system and strengthening it. Our immigration programs and systems need to be robust, they need to be responsive, but they also need to be agile and flexible. They need to change constantly because nothing stays constant in our immigration system. Our current challenge with housing crisis and medical access is a crisis, and it was caused by our immigration system because during COVID, the doors were shut. No one could come in and no one could go out. Then COVID stopped and the doors opened because nobody wanted to go back to work, and all the employers in the big cities were saying, we need workers, we need workers, we need workers, and they opened the floodgates. The challenge was it wasn't closed soon enough, and we ended up in a bit of a pickle. So when that was raised, the immigration minister at the time shut the doors and made changes to many programs, and it is currently still changing. We have a new Minister of Immigration, and basically my goal for our community is to work very closely with our Immigration Minister to make sure that we have the rural programs, that we have the skills and the talent that we need to keep our communities viable, but in a responsible and ethical way.
Thank you very much to Clint, and this concludes our question and answer portion. So as always, I encourage you to reach out directly to our candidates should you still have any questions, just not tonight, but maybe tomorrow morning if you're really anxious to ask them something. But what we're going to move on to now instead is closing remarks. So we're doing it in the reverse order of how we began, and we are giving candidates 3 minutes each So our first closing remarks will be from Jake.
We've had a lot of talk about all of these questions and all of these serious problems in Canada. Ultimately, those problems can be reduced to the moral issues that this Canada is facing, that this country is facing. I have talked to quite a few members of the big Band-Aid party. In a one-to-one discussion, there is agreement. Abortion is the taking of innocent, God-given lives. Abortion should be regulated by law. But on the campaign trail, there is silence. Disagreement between private and public stance. That indicates a serious issue with integrity. Silence in the face of great evil makes us complicit with that evil. That is the lesson that we learned from the Holocaust just 80 years ago. If we want good government, we need to send men and women with integrity to Parliament. And we need to remember that abortion is just the tip of the spear. Many other moral issues follow. And that's why we have so many questions about the issues facing this country. Integrity is also an issue for the voting booth. When I enter the voting booth, I must not stop my ears to the silent scream. I must choose life and truth. I must choose to seek God's blessing. That's what we need in this country. There is no future for this country without it. I know the issue of splitting the vote is at the heart of the struggle in the voting booth. That is an issue that we need to leave in God's hands. He can save with few, or he can save with many. Will we have faith to choose life, and truth, and integrity? Why does the big Band-Aid party refuse to address this core moral issue that's at the root of all of these other things that we've talked about? They are the big tent party. The abortion issue divides. Yes, it does divide. Truth does divide. Jesus even said, the King of Love, he said that. Truth does divide. Always has, always will. But the lie deceives. The lie destroys. The lie kills. Our country has been embracing the lie or embracing silence in the presence of the lie for many decades now. We must gather the courage to face the moral crisis at the heart of our great country. What is my goal for this campaign? My goal is to simply send a strong message to the conservative movement in this country. We really do believe that I personally believe there really is still a majority with a Judeo-Christian mind and heart set beneath the surface in this country. With an open, honest, sensitive discussion, it is a delicate subject, to be sure, appealing to common sense and true science as well. Around these very serious and delicate issues, a majority would rise and could form a government in Ottawa and deal with these core issues once and for all.
Okay.
That would be the first step towards God and His blessing.
I'm sorry. That's time. Thank you, Jake Weens. And we're over to Ken Thompson for your final remarks.
Yes, let's begin with the only reason why we are facing unprecedented threats is the government has not been acting in the best interest of Canadians for at least 3 decades. And a worldwide class of elite individuals has been dominating international relations and policy. We need to take back the control of our national identity. Testing. I've identified a number of issues that I think need to be addressed, and I'm sure other people have issues that I haven't thought of. My list of issues that need to be addressed include: we need to fund single and dual occupancy residence initiatives which use Canadian lumber products and do not create unreasonable profits for land developers. We need youth training programs that don't end before a young person has had a time to make a career choice. We need to rebalance government policy. Government's role is to see to the public interest and to let private interests take care of themselves. No more trickle-down economics. No more believing that international corporations or the wealthy care about Canadian families. No more externalizing industrial costs. We need controls on the relocation of business assets of Canada. I'm noting that the mills that our government contributed to the cost of developing have been all shipped down into the States. We needed to prevent that. We need to rethink Canada's position in global trade. We need to maintain agricultural supply management in any trade negotiations and support the expansion of local food production. We need to revisit the GST manufacturing sales tax decision made by the government of Prime Minister Mulroney, which shifted taxes from corporations to the Canadian public. We need to resolve problems facing what the problem First Nations communities have accessing clean water and having adequate housing. We need to reduce or eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. We need to reconsider tariffs placed on other countries for geopolitical reasons. A good example is this 100% tariff on China in respect to EVs. Why did we do that? Our agricultural production and seafood harvesters are suffering the consequences of that. We need to reconsider Canada's foreign policy. Why do we fund and involve ourselves in foreign wars when we have pressing Canadian needs? We need to reevaluate the role of the Canadian military and provide a reasonable level of funding based on satisfying identified needs. We have to have reasonable limits on credit card interest.
I'm sorry, Ken, but that's your 3 minutes. Our next closing remarks will be from Rudy Sands.
The People's Party of Canada is the only real alternative for both voters that desire a shake-up to our current political landscape. We are not career politicians, and we do not engage in identity politics. We are of the people and for the people. We want to put people first and make sure that they are represented in Ottawa. Our party is committed to addressing the root cause of our nation's problems and fix them. We stress individual responsibilities and mutual respect. We will represent all Canadians equally. We want Canada to preserve its identity, culture, history, and Christian foundation. We want to ensure Canada's sovereignty, free from foreign influence and interference, and reject unelected bodies such as the UN, the WHO, and the WEF. We want to encourage voters to read our platform to see if they align with our values and our goals to get Canada back on its feet. We want to encourage voters to go vote. Your vote is the only thing you have. Make it count. I sincerely hope that you will decide to vote with your values and your conscience, no matter who you decide to vote for. I love my country. May God keep our land glorious and free. Thanks for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rudy. And our next closing remarks will be from Clinton.
My closing statement is about me and you. I don't proclaim to have all the answers, and no one should. I'm not here to solve Canada's problems. I'm here to fight for ours, and for our community, and for our businesses, and for our workers, and our jobs. That is my priority. That is my goal, and that is my promise. I'm not here to win the race. I'm not here to proclaim I'm the best. But I am a community champion, and I will fight for you. I will stand beside you and fight for what we need in our communities, which is protecting our timber industry, protecting our jobs, improving our healthcare systems, and finding an alternative industry that we can build other businesses within our communities to survive if we ever find our timber industry under attack again. We are doing many things at the moment to protect the country as a whole, but my focus is to protect our community. I cannot make you vote for me, but I'm asking you to vote for me, to vote for change, and to put someone at the table that is prepared to stand up and shake the tree for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Clinton. And our next closing remarks will be from Todd Doherty.
First off, I want to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on. I'm a small business owner. I've said this before. I couldn't provide the benefits to our employees without our Chamber of Commerce in Prince George. So thank you for doing this. Thank you to Mayor Moontrade for being here as well too. He's listened the whole time. And thank you to all of you for being engaged. Thank you to our candidates as well too. You know, this is one. It's been said that this election is perhaps the most important election in our generation. I don't disagree. For the last 10 years, we've had a government that has waged war on our natural resources, which ultimately impacts us here. It's waged war on our small rural and remote communities. It's waged war on our small businesses. We've had a change at the head, apparently, of the Liberal government, a Liberal Party. But take a look who's standing around that leader, Mark Carney. It's the same group that have punished us for the last 10 years. Failed policies. Now all of a sudden they don't believe in climate change and the carbon tax, which they've gone and waged war with us for the last 10 years when we've opposed them. If you're tired of the crime that has infected our communities, if you're tired of turning on the TV and seeing that there's another overdose or fentanyl is still flowing across our borders, if you're tired of trying to just make ends meet, I hope that you'll cast your ballot for me. I get it. There's only been one person that has been fighting for you for the last 10 years. That is me. That is my team, either here in a region or in Ottawa. I told you the very first time I stood up before you that I wanted you to know who your member of parliament was, that I worked every day to make sure that you knew who I was and that I was fighting for you. And I've done that. I've stood beside you as we faced fire evacuations. I've stood beside you as the Chaco River was near dry. I fought for a white sturgeon facility. I fought to get investment in our communities. I fought for funding for our pool at this hearing. I fought hard for our forestry families and our mills that have been targeted by this Liberal government. And I'll continue to fight. I still have a lot of fight in me. I'm a kid from the Caribbean. And I love this place. And I love all of you. I love your families. We've had a good discussion over the last couple hours. I hope when you go into the ballot box, whether it's this weekend coming up or on April 28th, I humbly ask for your support. Thank you. Thank you.
And our final closing remarks will be from Angie Pananzo.
I run for the NDP because I run for the people. Whatever the outcome of this election, I wish to be that voice of reason in the House that safeguards the policies that we have in place. This is things like pharmacare, dental care, $10 a day child care that's in existence. We need to keep these going because this is who we are as Canadians and as a society. We look after each other, and I want to safeguard that for us in the House. A vote for the NDP is a vote for me, and I pledge to you that I will do my utmost best to protect what we value as Canadians. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angie. And let's have a round of applause for our candidates. And so now, before we conclude for the evening, I just have a couple quick reminders. So Monday, April 28th is election day. Eligible voters may cast their ballot here at the Chaco Seniors Friendship Center between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Advanced voting will be also held here at Friendship Center, April 18th through to the 21st, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Now, for more information, you can visit elections.ca. So on behalf of the Vanderhoof Chamber of Commerce and the Northern Real Estate Board, I would like to thank our candidates for coming out tonight Thank you to our volunteers and to our audience, both here and at home, for attending. And just remember that your vote matters, and I hope that you have a good evening. Goodbye.